the inconvenience. I'm Motikala Subba Dewan from NELTA. Dear presenters of today, Ms. Baisali Pradhan, and if Mr. Gunraj is there, and I would like to request you to join as soon as possible. And all the NELTA and BC's organizing team, wonderful teacher participants, home and abroad, namaskar, and good afternoon to all. Once again, I would like to welcome you all in the ongoing webinar series organized by the British Council and NELTA. This is the second webinar session of July, and title of the session is Teaching and Integrated Skills Lesson. Without further ado, allow me to introduce today's two dynamic presenters, Ms. Baisali Pradhan. Everybody knows her, still we have to complete our formalities. Ms. Baisali Pradhan, she is currently the head of the English and Education at British Council in Nepal. With a master's in mass communication and a Cambridge Delta, she has over 14 years of experience developing and delivering projects with a focus on training teacher educators, primary and secondary level teachers and school leaders on English language teaching, 21st century skills, communicative teaching techniques, and action research. Allow me to introduce Mr. Gunraj Nepal. He is a lecturer of English at Sukuna Multiple Campus Morang and Biswa Adarsa College Sunsari. He is also the chair of NELTA Morang. Mr. Nepal has spent more than 20 years in the field of teaching. He has facilitated several sessions on ELT for teachers across Nepal. He has presented papers and given plenaries both at the provincial and national conference of NELTA. Currently, he is an MPhil scholar at Kathmandu University School of English Language Education. His research and pedagogical interests include critical thinking, ecological approach to English language teaching, and interdisciplinary studies. Welcome Baisali ji and Gunraj. Please, now over to you. You can start your sessions. All the best.
Thank you so much, Motikala ji. I'm on behalf of British Council and NELTA, I would really like to apologize for this technical issue. I mean, I know we are quite late, but I hope you will bear with us and we can go through the session. It's really unfortunate that my co-presenter also wasn't able to get in the session today. With some technical issues, probably the couple of things that y'all are saying, probably there's an issue with the Teams platform today. I mean, it's technical and we really can't do anything about it. So hopefully, I'm still hopeful that he'll be able to join me in the middle. So yeah, let's just get started. We probably shouldn't be waiting any longer. Okay. Yeah, so just a couple of housekeeping stuffs before we go on. There will be a recording of this webinar. We will be sending it to you in your emails tomorrow. If you have colleagues and friends who weren't able to join the webinar today, but they have registered, they will also be able to receive the recording in their emails. And the recording will also be available in the British Council and the NELTA website, which is up there. You will also receive your certificate over the email tomorrow. You will be able to put your names down, download it, and keep it or print it later. An evaluation form will also come your way. I would really request you to take some time out and fill the form. We would love to know how our sessions are going and any other topics that you would want us to present further webinars on. So that will also be appreciated. Just some housekeeping rules. If you're not the speaker, please could you keep yourselves on mute and also switch your videos off. I mean, it's a great audience we have here today, a very disciplined audience. It's very glad to have such an audience. But if you have any questions in between, please do use the chat box, okay? And one of our team members will definitely get back to you. Okay, so the objectives for the session today, we are going to focus on what an integrated skills lesson is. We will also share why an integrated lesson is important. And we will also try and give some sample lessons, some demos, so that y'all are able to actually see how an integrated lesson could be shaped. Right, so moving on then, what is an integrated lesson? Okay, so an integrated lesson, really we've tried to take this tapestry as a metaphor to be able to explain it to you. When you see and sort of a tapestry, you can see how well woven it is. There's a lot of details in it. It's very intricate details. There are lots and lots of colors. So an integrated lesson really is kind of a mix of all of that. Just before I move on, anyone, rather, can you see my screen?
Yes, the screen
Yes,
shows.
yes. But some of them are writing they haven't seen yet. Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. Probably it's just the internet connection. Do let me know, okay, if my voice or or the screen is not moving, rather, okay? Right, great. So let's
Sure.
move on. So yeah, integrated lesson is kind of it's like a tapestry where things are really interwoven. It's very colorful. It's got intricate details, and it's really kind of a reflection of what the teacher wants their classroom to be. Okay, it's kind of it represents the characteristics of the teacher, of the learner, the setting, and also the relevant languages that the teacher wants to go forward with. So in an integrated lesson, you'll see a lot of examples where teachers are actually using various languages to be able to interact. You'll also see examples of how teachers are using real life experiences to be able to take a lesson. They will also be kind of a reflection of how the teacher wants their lessons to go ahead. And it's kind of a mixture of all the 4 skills that we talk about in English. So the listening, the reading, the speaking, the writing, and in between all the aspects of English, for example, the vocabulary, the grammar. So it's kind of an integrated, woven together kind of a lesson, okay? When we talk about the tapestry, I mean, something that is also reflects on that is kind of, it looks very complex. Sometimes the integrated lessons are complex, but not always. It kind of depends on the teacher, whether you make an integrated lesson complex or whether you actually keep it very simple. Okay, so now what is not an integrated lesson then? Okay. I mean, usually even when we are going and observing a lot of classes as part of our projects, when looking at teachers, a very good exploration and reflection of our textbook, if you've gone through it. I mean, I don't know, I see that we've got participants from various other countries as well. But if you look at a lot of textbooks that is used in Nepal, you will see that lessons are actually taking a very segregated approach. So you have a reading text, which does a lot of reading, it practices reading, and then suddenly you move on to a separate set of grammar, okay? So lessons are taught, the skills and the aspects are taught in isolation. So that sort of a lesson is not integrated, okay? And not an integrated lesson kind of focuses on skills in isolation, okay? Rather than interlinked and interweave together. And it's more like a segregated approach where the learners do reading, they practice some reading, they do some comprehension questions, and then they move on to a separate lesson where grammar is taught in isolation. And then you have a couple of other tasks dealing with a totally different topic. Okay, so what you see is that a lesson is kind of not an integrated lesson when the 4 skills, like you see on the screen, are moving in different directions. Okay, you might have a lesson focusing on individual skills, or sometimes you might have a lesson that focuses on 2 skills, but really not on the same topic. So that also doesn't become an integrated lesson. Yeah. Okay. So kind of let's do a quick comparison then. Okay. What really is a segregated approach and what is an integrated approach? So in a segregated lesson, the lesson presents language skills in a divorced form. Okay, so where there are 2 individuals, like I said, in isolation. But in an integrated approach, they marry together. Okay, so they're no longer divorced, they actually come together and they're interlocked, and it represents a real life, or that's how every day we communicate. So that's the kind of approach an integrated lesson takes. In a segregated lesson, it restricts language to a very narrow, non-communicative range. So it's not really about communication. It's usually about a subject. So that's how the segregated approach takes language learning. More like a subject, and you're kind of trying to do it to pass an exam. Whereas an integrated approach, it links all the language skills together, and there's a real authentic reason why you're learning that language. In a segregated approach, it's more taking a language-based approach where it's mostly about grammar. It's mostly about the aspects of a language. Whereas in integration, you're talking about language as a skill, and you're talking about a lesson that focuses on a whole language, or it's focusing on what we take sort of being able to practice skills, the skills aspects of a language, okay? Segregation is usually taken as a traditional approach where there's a lot of grammar translation used. Whereas in an integrated approach, it's like more a modern approach where it's content-based instruction and it's task-based instruction. So it's very activity-based. There are tasks going on and you're focusing on the content and the skills bit of the language. Okay. Moving on then. Okay. Let's try and do a bit of an interaction between me and the participants, okay? I would like you to be using the chat box, okay, for giving me the answers, yeah? Okay, there are a couple of words on the screen in pink, okay? Those are going to be your options. So we're going to do a quick fill in the blanks activity, okay? And those are your options. So you need to choose one word among those. I'm going to put up a sentence each. It's going to be a blank space there. Try and fill it with one of these words. Okay, and please use the chat box to give me your answers, okay? The first one. We learn a language in order to. Great, Sudha, you're the first one there to write communicate. We've got Baburam, Geeta, Rachna, Aisha. Oh, there are loads now. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, so we learn a language in order to communicate. Okay. What about the next one? I'll come to the first one in a while. When we communicate, we often use. What's the next word? Baburam says interactive. Krishna, I think you're the first one. Krishna Sharma, you're the first one to give me the answer. Yes, when we communicate, we often use more than one language skill. Okay, let's try and analyze these two sentences a bit more. Okay, so when we learn a language, we learn it in order to communicate. We hardly learn a language to pass an exam. Okay, we need to move away from the concept that we are learning English in order to pass our exam. We can't get rid of that. But what we need to make our learners understand, and what teachers need to understand, is that we are teaching our learners English not just to pass an exam, but we're helping them learn the language in order to communicate. Okay, if our learners aren't able to communicate with one another in English, but are able to answer the grammar questions, then we kind of haven't met our objectives of teaching them the language. Okay, and an integrated approach kind of forces the teacher to think about language as a means of communication rather than a means to pass an exam. Okay, and we'll be giving you examples, so we'll come to that in a while. Yeah, and when we communicate, naturally, generally, when we communicate, we use more than one language, right? For example, I am speaking. I am also reading what you're writing. So we are communicating with each other. My speaking skills, my reading skills. If y'all were speaking to me, I would have been practicing my listening skills. Okay. So generally we use more than one language skills when we're communicating. So why don't we teach more than one skills when we're actually learning English in the class? Why should language skills be taught in isolation? That is an unnatural process. Okay. So an integrated approach actually tells you that you should be communicating by you should be learning by using more than one language skills, right? Okay, your next one then. Your next fill in the blanks. Integrating different skills helps to, what's the word? Bhanu Kesi, good job. You're the first one who has given me the answer. Right, yes, language integrating different skills helps to build new knowledge and skills in students. Okay, right. Let's do one more and then we'll get into the explanation. Okay, let me give you one more. What about this one? Good job, Sudha. Sudha, Amzad, Rachna, I think I got your answers at the same time. Yes, an integrated skills lesson will have a variety of activities. Right, so let's focus on these two sentences now. Integrating different types of skills, it helps build new knowledge, okay? And it is often said that learning of one skill or practicing one skill actually helps you to practice another skill. So it helps each other, okay? That is why new knowledge is built and new skills are developed. So that is why practicing a lot of skills in a language lesson actually helps build new knowledge. Another thing that an integrated approach says is that an integrated lesson uses a variety of activities, okay? Now, if a teacher has to practice speaking, listening, reading and writing almost at the same time, he or she definitely needs to come up with a variety of activities. Okay, so an integrated lesson will have a variety of activities naturally in a lesson. Okay, what about this one then? Right, Parshuram, Amzad, I've got your answers at the same time. Yes, lessons are interactive. Okay, naturally. So naturally, when you're doing a lot of activities, when you're doing a variety of activities, your lessons naturally will become interactive. Okay, that's another thing that integrated approach actually says, that using this approach really makes your lessons interactive, where students are actually talking to each other a lot of times. What about this one? Good job. Balkumar, Balkrishna, Mukti, and Nirajan. I think I got your answers at the same time. Yes, students are motivated to learn. Okay, and that's natural, isn't it? When you have a variety of activities, when you have an interactive lesson, students are naturally motivated to learn. Okay, so that is why an integrated approach really motivates students to learn. Okay, let's try the next one. Real life. Good job. Yes, Robin, Amzad. Good, good. Yes, that's the answer. So it encourages real life communication. Okay, students are not just communicating for the sake of it. They're actually talking about their real life, they're personalizing situations, and language really becomes real for them. Okay, the final one then. What's the answer? Right, Muktinath, I think I got your answer. The first, yes, it follows a communicative approach to teaching. Yeah, all the principles that we know about communicative teaching, it holds true for an integrated approach to learning as well. Okay, because again, students are motivated, it's interactive, they're talking about real life. Those are all principles of communicative approach to teaching. Yeah. Okay, moving on then. So the advantages of integrated learning, okay? Just sort of a summary of all that we discussed in the fill in the blanks. Learners are exposed to authentic language, and by that we mean real language, okay? And it challenges them to learn language naturally. However we learn naturally any language, be it our own mother tongue at home, or be it a new language that we learn, the way we learn naturally, that's how English should be taught. So that's what it encourages our learners to engage with, okay? A natural way of learning a language. and it encourages real life communication because they're talking about things in real life. It stresses that English is not just a subject to learn or to pass an exam, but it is actually a real means of interaction, okay? And it promotes real content. So it's not just textbook knowledge, but is actually knowledge related to their real life. And something that another advantage is that it actually allows teachers to track students' progress in multiple skills at the same time. So at the same lesson, the teacher is able to be able to monitor or to be able to track the progress of whether the student is good at this skill or that skill. So it's able to do that. Okay. And of course, it's highly motivating for students at all ages and all backgrounds. Before I move on, can I quickly check, Radha, did we have Sir joining us by any chance, or I should continue?
I just got off the phone with him. He's still trying. The area where he's at as well, the internet is not very stable as well, he's saying. I have shared the same link again. I mean, he's gonna try, but it seems very unlikely.
Okay. But that's okay. I probably should move on then. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Brady, again, apologies for the technical error. I really wish my co-presenter was there with me today, but we probably should just continue. Okay. Right. So a bit on how should we integrate skills then. Okay. We know the advantages. We know what is good, why we should do it. So let's try and see how, are there any ways in which we can go about this then? Okay. Right. So the first, I mean, there are three ways. Okay. There are three really ways in which we can approach this. The first way would be to integrate within the same medium. So trying to focus a lesson on either the oral medium or the written medium. So if you want to focus on the oral medium, you could actually do a lesson where the receptive skill you're practicing or teaching is listening, and the productive skill that you can choose is speaking. So maybe you have a lesson which you give them a listening text. You do a couple of listening activities and you end it with a speaking task. So in your lesson, you're actually integrating the listening and the speaking skills over an oral medium. Okay. The other way in which you can do is a written medium, where the skills that you're choosing to focus on would be the reading and the writing skill. So you would start off with a reading text, again, do a couple of activities, and maybe at the end, you would have a writing practice. So that's one way in which you can do your integrate skills and do your lesson. Okay. The other way you can approach this is by integrating between the mediums. Okay, so choosing one from an oral medium and choosing one from a written medium. So maybe listening and writing, or we do reading and speaking, or we do reading and listening. Okay, but usually it is recommended that in every lesson we should try and focus on a receptive and a productive skill. Okay, so another way of doing it would actually be engaging between the mediums as well. And the final way in which we can do this then would be a complex integration. Okay, where, sorry about that. Right, where there are a series of activities that uses a variety of skills and making the activity as closely linked as well thematically. Okay, so if you want to choose a complex integration, you could start your lesson with a listening skill. You do a couple of activities. You then do a speaking activity. And then you end it with a writing activity. So you're kind of mixing more than two skills and trying to make your lesson an integrated one. Okay. I'm now going to show you two samples. Okay. We'll try and do a demo of them. So the first sample, I've taken it from grade 4, unit 1, be careful. So this is based on a Nepali textbook. I know that I can see a lot of people in the audience who are from other countries as well. But the lesson that we've chosen is from a Nepali textbook. It's from grade 4, unit 1, and the topic is be careful. Okay, and the skills that we're going to focus on is reading and speaking. So in reading, there are a couple of sub-skills that we'll be focusing on, prediction, reading for specific details, and in speaking, we're kind of going to focus on note-taking and fluency. Okay, so let's get started then. This one is primary. The next sample I'll be showing you is focusing on a secondary lesson. Okay, so let's do this one first. Okay, again, I want you to interact using the chat box, okay? Look at the two pictures up on the screen, and can you tell me what you think the story is about? What do you think we're going to focus on in the lesson today by looking at the two pictures? Sudha says helping someone in need. Manju, overuse of gadgets, good one. Aisha says values. Jaya says be careful. Okay, might have got that from the topic. Samjana says to be careful. That was a good one, Krishna. Focus on your path.
How fishy to know?
I'm so sorry about that. That's my son. Sorry about that. Okay, helping in an accident. Okay, those are good ones. Yes, okay. So most of you are thinking it's about helping. It's about misusing of the gadgets. That was quite good ones. Okay, we're still getting some more. Taking precautions, helping one another. Okay, let's stop now. Okay, let's stop now. So if this was a real lesson, okay, the focus of this task, so you're starting the lesson with using the two pictures taken from the textbook. It's not new pictures. These pictures are there in the textbook, okay? So you're taking pictures from the textbook and you're getting your students to just look at the pictures and try to guess what the story is about, okay? Now, what this task will help you do is help students get interest in the topic. So you're arousing the interest. You're preparing the learners to read. You're brainstorming, okay? So they're already talking to themselves. They're already doing a lot of brainstorming. You can get them to talk to each other, talk to your pair, and discuss what the pictures are about. So you're already practicing some speaking, and you're helping them make predictions. Okay, so that's what's going to be the focus of this one. Now, the next task then will be to check for your predictions, right? So read the text and check if your prediction is correct. Okay, so then what the teacher can do is get them to read the text and try and see whether what they predicted was correct. Okay, so would you quickly want to do that? Would you want to check if your predictions were correct? I'm sure a couple of your predictions were right. Yeah. Okay. So then you get your students to actually read, and then you're getting them to check if their predictions are correct. Okay. Yes, Minju, to a large extent. Okay. Now let's understand the focus of this task then. Okay. So what you're actually doing is, again, like I said, you're getting them to check whether their predictions are correct. But what they're now doing is they're reading for gist. Okay. This is the first time they're reading. So remember, when we are practicing, when they're teaching them how to read, you just don't get them to answer questions right at the start, right? So this task is actually helping them just to read for gist, giving the learners an opportunity to just get familiar with the text, okay? Because all that they're doing is they're just checking whether what they predicted was right or wrong. Okay, so this is now gradually helping them to develop their reading skills. Right, so then when you move on, the next text is, again, there's a exercise in the text. So then you ask the readers, your learners, to read the text again and do this task. Okay, so now what this is helping them with is actually giving the learners a second opportunity to understand the text. And now you're gradually preparing them for the next skill, gradually preparing them to do the next skill. Okay, so this again is kind of forcing the teacher to help your students practice the reading skills in the right manner. Not just following the textbook where usually it is read the text and answer the comprehension questions. Okay, this is kind of helping you build the skill into the learning process and making it real for the learners. Okay, right, so finally then the post reading. You first need to get learners to take notes before they start speaking. Okay, so what you can get them to do is, what did you learn from this story? Or what was the moral of the story? Okay, or there could be further questions. What will you do if you see someone fallen on the ground? Yeah, trying to make it more real for them, personalizing it for them, and also ask them, what do you think happens next in the story? So again, you're getting them to think. And first, before the speaking activity, always make your learners take notes first, and then gradually get them to talk to each other. Okay, so then you finally did a reading where you helped them get the reading skills by making predictions and confirming predictions, reading for gist. Then you got them to read again. And then finally, you're getting them to do a lot of practice of speaking, but then still they're focusing on the topic of the reading. You're not suddenly going into something else, okay? So that is how you interlink all the activities, and that's how it becomes a tapestry, where everything is woven together. Okay? Right, so that was a sample from a primary lesson. I mean, these are just sample post reading, okay? You can give them many, many more. I would now like to share, okay, yeah, I mean, the focus of this would be note-taking skills. I mean, giving our learners an opportunity to read the text and relate it to real life, yeah, and making language learning very real, okay? Right, so let me show you the next sample now. Before I move on again, just to check, I did see a couple of comments there saying that they finally got to log in. Any chance we've got our other speaker in, Radha?
I do not see him here yet.
Okay, that's okay. It's really a shame, but let's move on. Right, so let's do another sample, okay? Now this sample, this one I've taken from a grade 7, unit 1 lesson, My Childhood Wishes. And the skill that we're going to practice is listening. Again, you're practicing prediction, because you can do prediction and listening skills as well. And you're listening for specific details. And finally, you're doing speaking, which can also be changed into a writing activity. Okay, and in between, we'll try and see how we can integrate grammar as well, the aspects part of a language. Okay, we'll try and see that as well. And after every task, this time, what I would want you to think about, and again, use the chat box, is now you think about the focus. Okay, you think about the objectives. Yeah? Okay, let's move on then. Okay, now what the teacher can do is show 2 pictures like I've shown on the screen, okay? What facilities can you expect to find in these towns and cities? I mean, we can start off by telling them, where do you think these cities are? And what facilities can you expect to find in these cities these days? Okay, you can, like I said, get them to talk in pairs. Okay, in pairs. If you're doing an online lesson, maybe you can't use pairs, so you'll have to use the chat box. Okay, but if it was a face-to-face session, you could again get them to talk in pairs. So kind of looking at the 2 pictures and getting them to think about the facilities that you can expect to find in these towns and cities. Okay. A quick reflection on your own then. What do you think is the focus of this? What do you think is coming next? What am I trying to prepare my learners for? Arousing interest, yes. But what do you think is coming? What do you think is coming up next? What idea does it give you? What do you think we are gradually getting into? Different lifestyles and different habitats. Good, Aisha. Okay. Yeah. So gradually your wishes, okay, Sudha says wishes, probably you're getting them to compare. Good. Okay. So it's not just about, yeah, dream destination. Good one, Sudha. So yeah, you're not just getting them, you're not just arousing interest, okay, but your learners will already start thinking, okay, maybe in today's lesson, we are going to talk about different habitats. Maybe we're going to talk about comparing things, okay? So kind of you're already gradually building that among your learners, yeah, with the task that you're choosing. Okay, right, Rohini, you're already giving me options. Good roads, pollution. Right. Next, what you can then do is then tell them a bit about the story. Okay, so next we're going to listen to what Indira says about her own village. Okay, so we're going to hear something about Indira. She's going to talk about the facilities in her village. She's going to talk about things that she had in her town as a child and what she has now. So that's what we're going to listen to. Maybe before we listen to that, you think about 2 examples that she might give. What might she talk about? Okay, so you can pose questions like this to your learners, and to support them, you can also give them some examples. For example, maybe she said as a child she had no electricity, but now she has electricity. When she was a child, there were a lot of people, but now there are less people. Okay, so you can give your learners examples and get them to think and predict what she might say. So now, if this is the task, then what am I trying? What is my objective? What am I trying to do? What is the focus? What do you think? What am I trying to get my learners to do now? Compare and contrast. Good. Yes, I'm getting them to think about the differences. Good. Yes, they'll be speaking to each other, so they will be practicing their speaking skills. But gradually, I'm trying to get into the language of comparison. I'm trying to think about what had happened in the past and what is now gradually happening. Okay. Yes, I'm trying to help them think about village life and city life as well. Okay. Good. And you're doing a lot of creativity and critical thinking. Exactly. Yeah. So this task is then gradually preparing them to do the listening task, right? Okay. So next, then we will get them to listen. I'm not going to play the listening right now, okay, because I'm very conscious of the time. And I know you all really had spent a lot of time waiting, but I'm going to explain the task to you, okay? And if we have Nepali teachers here who want an audio script of that lesson, you can surely get in touch with us. We could send you links to the audio script as well, okay? So next, the teacher can play the audio where Indira is sharing. Okay, she's reading. It's a reading text, but then it's being recorded. So now we do the listening. Okay, and they listen and they check their prediction. Okay, for now they're not doing anything else, but just listening and predicting whether the ideas were right or wrong. Yeah. So now what is this? Am I altogether getting into listening, or are they listening for gist? Yeah. So gradually, what they're doing is they're just listening for gist. We're just preparing them to listen. Okay. So next, what we can then do is, right, so then after they are able to do that, we can play the tape again and get students to note down all the different facilities that she talks about. Okay. So gradually now you're preparing them with their listening skills. Yeah. Because the first time you hear something, you're not going to understand it. Okay. But you're giving them a chance to do that. Now, secondly, you're getting them to listen to it again. And now what they're doing is they're looking for words that she talks about in terms of her village. Okay. So you're gradually moving into lexical items. Yeah. Gradually, you're building the grammar aspects as well. Okay. Another activity you could do is play the tape again and note down all the adjectives that she uses to describe her village. Okay, so gradually you're bringing in and integrating aspects as well, the grammar points and the vocabulary stuffs along with the skills. Okay, so that's the next activity that you could do. And gradually then move into speaking, where you then get your students again to interact with each other, ask them questions like, where do you live? How similar or different is your village as compared to Indira's village? So you can get them to relate to the text that they just listened again, and do a final speaking activity where you're changing everything and making it real for them. Okay? Right, so those were 2 examples. And I mean, this speaking activity, you can actually make it into a written task as well. So for your homework, maybe you want to write down and describe your own village, speak to your grandparents and find out how your village was when they were young, and write about how your village is right now. Yeah, so you could do writing activities like that as well. But something that you need to keep in mind is all the skills and all the aspects are focusing on the same theme that you started off with. Okay, like in the first one, it was about being careful. In the second one, it is about comparing different places. So the theme is the same. In an integrated lesson, that's what you need to make sure, that your theme is still the same and you just keep using all the different skills and aspects. Yeah. Okay. Finally, then let's come to a bit of challenges. Okay. I mean, yes, it's a great idea. It's very interesting to do, but we still could have challenges. Yeah. There's a lot of demand that is placed on the teacher more than the learner. Okay. A teacher has to be very well prepared, has to have a planned approach to be able to do the lesson. Yeah. And a teacher needs to devote more time in preparing materials and preparing the tasks, because our textbooks don't follow that approach. I mean, if we had a textbook that followed a really integrated lesson, it would be great. But we know our current textbooks don't. So the teacher needs to spend a little more time in adapting the current activities in the text and doing an integrated lesson. Okay. It is also sometimes said that learners might develop different proficiencies in different skills. So there are a lot of people who say, oh, when you follow an integrated lesson, students really are just developing their speaking skills and don't do much on grammar. But then something we need to realize is that's natural, isn't it? Would it be better that our learners know what adjectives are, but don't know how to use it? Or do you think it would be better that our students know how to use the adjectives even before knowing that it is an adjective? Yeah, so that's the thing that we need to think about. Okay, it's not on the words and the terminologies that we want to focus on. We want to focus on the use of it. Yeah, so that's another challenge that some people usually say. Yeah, they also usually say that it takes language learning as skills development, and teachers might not focus on grammar and aspects a lot. But then again, you kind of need to be able to bring that together like we did in the last sample. Okay. And sometimes it might be challenging when you have a very large class. It might be more stressful for the teacher. Okay. But then again, a lot of other classroom management skills should be able to help the teacher to even implement this in a very large class. Okay. Finally, then, just to kind of sum up everything that we just discussed, kind of integrated skills, it's rather than having the separation of the skills, it's advisable that you work together with all the skills, because that's the most natural way in which people learn a language. It is about language acquisition and the way we learn it naturally, rather than following a textbook approach. And integrated lessons actually take a very natural method of learning a language. The objective really is to develop learners' fluency and accuracy and help them with communicative competence, rather than being excellent in grammar and not having the skills to use that grammar. Yeah, so it takes a very communicative competence approach. And I mean, again, it has its own challenges. It's kind of an evolving approach. You can find many, many books these days. For example, books that are language learning books, okay? Like, for example, you might have Cambridge books or Pearson books or Oxford books that are more related to language learning. They truly follow an integrated approach, okay? But our textbooks usually don't. So, but it's an evolving approach, okay? But it's about trying, teachers trying and adapting textbooks and trying to see how can they actually integrate and wove all of these skills together, so it actually is more integrated and well woven together, just like the tapestry we saw right at the start of the presentation. Right, I think I'm done with the presentation. We can now move to questions, if there are any. Oh, over to you, Radha.
Okay. Radha,
Oh,
Sarita ji, could you please take questions?
To Sarita ma'am, I guess.
Sarita ji?
I think Sarita ma'am is not there.
She is also maybe internet connection. Okay, Radha, could you please? Yes.
So I've collected the questions. There are two questions, one from Niranjan Gimiriji, and his question is, complex integration is new topic for him, might be practiced but technically unknown. Please explain more about this topic.
Okay, so yeah, complex integration. So that was one of the three approaches that we can use, okay? So complex integration is usually, it's actually the sample that I just showed, especially the second one, where we were integrating listening, speaking, writing, grammar. We were doing a lot of lexical items. We were doing adjectives. So a complex integration is really about trying to integrate all the four skills, including the aspects and the grammar bits, into a single lesson. So that's what complex integration is. Okay, much more challenging than the other ones. Okay, but with practice, I think that would come naturally. And usually, I mean, in Nepal, probably in South Asian countries as well, we usually have a 40 to 45-minute lesson. So trying to integrate using a complex integration approach might not always be feasible in a 40 to 45-minute lesson. Okay, but the whole concept of complex integration is really to be able to develop your tasks in such a way that you are trying to integrate majority of the skills, including grammar and vocabulary and all of the aspects of it as well. Okay.
And the second question is, do you suggest any difference in the activity-based learning on the basis of individual differences between students, like gifted ones, etc.?
Okay, if I've understood your question correctly, an activity-based approach, I mean, would kind of be similar, but you could use an activity-based approach just by practicing one skill. Okay, you don't necessarily have to integrate different skills to take an activity-based approach. Yeah, so it would kind of be similar and a bit different. Okay. In terms of the different types of learners, again, if I've understood correctly, I mean, this approach, I feel, would actually be able to help you cater to different types of learners. Okay? For example, if you have auditory learners, and if you are able to integrate the listening aspect, it would work great for them, wouldn't it? Rather than getting them to read something. Yeah? But if you know that majority of your learners in your class are actually, they like reading, they could actually do the reading activity and you could skip the listening one and just do a bit of listening, just do the prediction with listening, and then get them to read and do the final other activities. Yeah. So I think this type of integrated approach would actually help you cater to a lot of different types of learners. Yeah. Maybe if your learners are kinesthetic learners, and if you have a face-to-face lesson, you could actually get them to sit together with strips of paper and do a true and false activity rather than do it from the textbook, for example. Yeah. So I think it would actually be helpful for a variety of learners in your classrooms.
Okay.
Any other?
Okay. There's last question, third question from Fakhruddin. How to inculcate reading habits in the students of present generation?
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, Akriti. I mean, reading in the current situation, I mean, I think I understand they probably would like to read a story on Kindle rather than pick up a textbook and read, or rather than pick up a hard copy book and read. Yeah. But I think as teachers in the classroom, to be able to help them develop their reading skills, I think again it comes down to the type of activities that you choose, because reading can be made fun. Yeah. For example, just think about the current reading text. Okay. In a class 4, that lesson is the Be Careful one. For example, it's a textbook lesson of class 4, grade 4. Okay. If the teacher, without doing anything beforehand, gets the learners or asks the learners, open your textbooks, read that text and answer the questions that are there. I mean, imagine, would you think the learners in grade 4 would be able to interact well with the reading text and do the answers and be motivated to actually read? I mean, maybe not. Yeah. So the prediction task and the before that you did, which aroused their interest, I mean, that actually is building curiosity and is gradually getting them interested to read. Okay. And all of a sudden, you're not getting them to read and do a difficult task. Yeah. You're getting them to read just to do a simple reading and do a prediction because before you do the real task, you're getting them to read again. Okay, so it's not going to be so scary for them. Okay, so getting them to be interested in reading, I think it's for the teacher to be able to select a lot of reading for gist activities. I mean, if you would want some examples of reading for gist activities, I would suggest that, I mean, we have our British Council Teaching English website where you can type, search gist reading activities. You would get a lot of activities that you can pick up to do some gist reading before you actually get them to read the longer texts. Yeah. Okay.
I can see 2 participants are raising hands. No, Radha, could you please check that? Baburam Timilsna and F.A. Fatu. Yeah, they are raising their hands.
Yeah, would it be possible
Yeah, Baburam
to,
Timilsna.
if you have a question, would it be possible to use the chat box to write the question?
Chat box.
Very long.
Yes, the chat box, please.
And we have one more question from Sudazi. That's in the current scenario, how can writing tasks be evaluated when classes are online?
Okay, I think we did cover this in the last webinar, if I'm not mistaken, or did we just focus on speaking? Okay, probably we just focused on speaking, so maybe I could give a couple, maybe just one example, let's say. Okay, for writing tasks, I mean, I think once you give a writing task, you would, if it's a writing task that you're doing in real time, I mean, in synchronous, when you are in front of the screen and getting them to write something, one, you have to have the videos on, and after they finish writing, get them to show it on the screen so you have evidence and proof of what they've written. Okay. And what you can get them to do is, or if it's a very small class, then tell your parents that as soon as the lesson finishes, take a picture and send it to me, and not like tomorrow or day after. Yeah. But then the first thing would be to evidence of them writing is to get them to show it to you on the screen, right up in front, so you can at least get an idea of what they've written, and later take a picture and then correct it. Yeah. Or if it's an adult, I mean, if it's sort of a secondary class lesson where, and you're using Zoom, for example, in Zoom, you have the opportunity to do one-to-one personal chatting. So you can get your learners to send you whatever they've written on a private chat. So it comes only to you and you can do the correction. Yeah, just 2 ideas for doing writing assessment in online settings, but you could get more on our Teaching English website for sure. Any final question?
Radha, any questions there?
Yeah, I have posted one question, madam. I am Fakhruddin from International Indian School, Jubail. My question is this: should we force the students to use cursive method of writing, or they should be allowed to write in a free hand as to proceed in their way?
I mean, again, of course, not a session on writing. Probably various people have various answers to this. I mean, again, for me personally, I think it's for the teacher to be able to understand why you're getting them to write. Is it handwriting practice, or is it writing to communicate something?
In most of the schools, they have compelled the students, force the students to use the cursive method of writing.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, that's what I said. I think it's for the school and the teacher to be able to find out, I mean, why you're doing it. Yeah, sometimes you have rules to follow, but I think basically it's about, because writing is more expressing and communicating. I rarely think the way you write it, I mean, the handwriting bit of it would be important, but then of course you might have your own rules at school. So I think it's more relative to the school. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, I
So
think
we have, okay.
please continue.
Yeah, can we take one more question, Vaishali?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's one more question from Minji Sobaji. So what about the preschool students? It is possible to go for written evaluation? And I think Baburam sir wants to ask question in person. I don't know if we are able to do that or not.
I don't know. I mean, we did take one, so maybe we can allow Baburam sir to speak as well, okay? But very briefly. Maybe that's the last one. I'll just do the preschool one, yeah? The pre-primary one. Preschool. I mean, I think at preschool, if you would, if I'm to give the answer on the British Council principles, for me, preschool would really be about letters and more about oral assessments rather than written, unless you want them to write the alphabets, probably. So again, if you want to get them to write alphabets on an online session, it's again about showing on the screen. But really, I think we at British Council believe that for pre-primary children or even very, very young learners, it's more about oral assessments rather than written. Because writing is really the last skill that we focus on, don't we? I mean, as soon as we are born, we learn how to listen, we learn how to speak, we learn how to read, and then we learn how to write. Okay? So it's very, very unfair to get very young learners to do writing when they haven't even developed the other three skills. So it's very, very unfair in terms of language learning principles. Yeah. Maybe we do a final one from Baburam sir, but really short.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for enlightening session. I'm truly, impressed with this. My only question is about the pedagogy. Talking about this COPS theory, there are four kinds of learners: auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, and integrated learners. And what all you highlighted today in the session is integrated learning system. But I do find a problem here. How do we meet a point? If you see teacher, in terms of teacher could be an auditory learner, visual learner, kinesthetic, or integrated as being a student in his or her time. And so is the case with the students, and even the learning curriculum and the content as such could be of that kind. So how do we find the meeting point to have integrated learning? It's my question. This integrated learner has to do with textbook, it has to do with students, it has to do with teachers. All right.
Right. Thank you for the question. Okay, I think what I'd like to start with is, as teachers, we always need to remember we are supposed to be teaching the curriculum and not the textbook. Yeah, more so in terms of language learning. It might be different for other subjects, okay? I'm talking about language learning. And more in terms of language learning, the only tool that a teacher should actually be using would be the curriculum, because that's what it states. By the time your learner is at this age, this is what they need to know. Okay, so some support you can take from the textbooks. Some things, for example, in an integrated lesson, I mean, you might have to come up with various ideas yourself. Okay, and again, like I mentioned earlier, there was another question related to types of learners. It's up to the teacher to be able to devise the task and make it suitable for different types of learners. Okay, again, in one lesson, you might not be able to do everything. In a 45-minute lesson, all of that is not going to be possible. Yeah, so it's for the teacher to be able to choose some of these ideas from his or her toolbox and be able to make a lesson that is most suitable for their group of learners. Yeah, but then the curriculum, I mean, that's the basis. Okay, that should be your focus. Your teacher should go into the classroom kind of language learning, thinking that this is the language point I'm going to focus on, and this is how I'm going to do it. I mean, I think if you take that approach, I know it's challenging, but if you take that approach, it might be a little helpful for the teacher to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Over to you, Radha. Over to you, Sarita ma'am. Or Motikala ma'am. I don't know if Sarita ma'am is still around.
Yeah, I think it's close now. I think the question session is over. Shall we wrap up, Baisali ji?
Yes.
It's okay?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Thank you very much, Baisali ji, for your support and leading successfully today's webinar confidently. We understand the technicality in presentation when other presenter missed the presentation. Mr. Gunraj Nepal could not join due to technical error. We missed his valuable presence and professional sharing. You led actually, Baisali ji, the session with your insightful sharing on teaching and integrated skills lesson that provided us a food for a thought. You presented the realities of Nepalese textbooks and curricula, which missed to embrace the spirit of these integrated skills. You clearly mentioned that this integrated skill is like tapestry image filled with different colors to make it complete and beautiful. In teaching learning also, all four skills should be like a tapestry image that could be integrated in teaching and learning. In addition, you also share about the segregated and integrated approach, which is very, very eye-opening to all. You also presented what kinds of activities will be conducted to integrate these four skills in teaching and learning. Moreover, you talk about the advantages of integrated skills. It depends on learners' acquisition skills, and we know there are challenges and limitation of integrated instruction in large class like in Nepal. Also, it's very complex, this integrated approach will not always it is applicable to apply in 45 minutes class. However, this will help a lot of varieties of learners. This sharing is very, very informative and useful for us. I hope all the participants are very much enlightened and they are able to use and apply in this virtual class for their learners. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Baisali ji and congratulate for her effort and time, providing very practical session and responding all the queries. Once again, we ask our apology for the inconvenience. I also would like to thank all the national and international participants for your interactive participation and patience, and the team members from the BC and NELTA working behind the curtain for their support to make the webinar session a great success. Okay, see you all in the next webinar session on 17 July at 4 to 5 on students assessment in online teaching. Thank you very much. Stay at home, continue to learn. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Baisali ji. Thank you so much to all the participants. Yes, sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, goodbye to all. Yes, see you there in the next webinar. Bye-bye.